Hi, I'm Artevis. I don't know about you, but I kind of get a kick out of lying to my friends in social deception games. Right now, my favorite social deception game is Project Winter. I really enjoy this game because it involves a unique mixture of deception, player versus player, and player versus environment combat, crafting, and objective completion goals. These things help to make each game unique, exciting, and somewhat skill-based. For a lot of us, lying doesn't really come naturally, so going into a game as a trader can be stressful. Most of the stress as a trader seems to happen at the beginning of the game when trying to formulate a plan and hide your identity, with another peak in stress happening toward the end of the game when you're trying to pick off any remaining survivors. For survivors, it's a little more simple in the beginning, but it becomes more stressful as you try to defeat traitors and avoid being killed so that you can get into the escape vehicle. To help you alleviate some of the stress that's associated with being a traitor and lying to your friends, I'm going to explore some aspects of deception that might help you increase your success rate and lie your way to victory. Rather than sitting here and giving you anecdotes about what might work and what might not, I'm only going to focus on things that have been peer-reviewed in scientific literature so that you can be sure that I'm not just trying to lie to you myself. The first thing that we'll be exploring about lying is called the truth effect. Hearing false information over and over again increases the chance that that information will be believed, even when people initially know that that information is false. The fact that this effect can occur, even when people know better, was demonstrated in a study published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology General in 2015. In this article, the first experiment that the researchers did was to expose people to information by asking them to rate their interest in a series of statements. The purpose of this survey was just to expose people to false information that they would see again in later surveys. So what I've done here is in red, there is a false statement that's been shown one time. Next, people were given a second survey where they were asked to rate the statement's truthfulness on a scale from 1 to 6. Some of the statements were repeated, as I've shown in red, and some of the new statements that were false were seen for a first time on the second survey. Finally, at the very end, people were given a knowledge test, and this was meant to see whether or not they really knew the answer to the statements or not. It turns out that even when people knew the correct answer based on the knowledge test, when false information was repeated, they were more likely to rate it as more true than the false information that they had only seen one time. Overall, what this study demonstrates is that when you repeat false information, it makes people more likely to believe it, whether they really knew the truth or not. So next time you're playing your favorite social deception game, see if you can drop a name a couple of times to increase the group's suspicion about that person. Maybe drop a little bit of false information here or there so that you can get out of tricky situations later. If you're careful and tie the name to specific things that person is doing that could be interpreted as traitor-like, such as crafting bear traps or running off alone, you might be able to turn everyone against them.
What the fuck is going on?
You know, Shush, you leave for a second and things just go bad.
What's up?
The whole world changes.
I'm so sorry. I'm down, you guys.
Oh. I'm sorry. I'm a doubter.
Dude, man, you better...
Did you not hit him at all, Panda?
I hit him, but I was already low.
Alright, revive.
Hey, you can revive Shush.
Panda's the
and
Yeti.
me.
Panda's the Yeti.
I
can't speak English.听不懂.
Help! He's bad. He's trying to convert everyone.
He's bad. Kill him.
I'm doctor.
Baffled. You have to rest some people here because this is a bad situation.
He's got the ultimate strat. No one can ask him anything.
That guy.
No, enemy.
Don't. He's gonna hit you. Ah! I swear to God.
All of us are good. It's him.
Pick up Shush.
Pick me up.
Shush.
Pick up Shush.
Shush,
Oh no.
No. Oh.
I'm so sorry.
Dude, man.
What's happening? I'm so sorry.
This is for my
I'm so
safety.
sorry. This is so chaotic, dude. Why do you
Dude,
like this?
I am
Like
a
Mia
mastermind.
on the weekend.
I'm proud of my children.
God. How the tables have turned.
Ow!
The second feature of lying that we'll look at is called the inhibitory spillover effect. This effect is kind of weird, so just bear with me for a minute. So, have you ever had to pee real bad and find that you had an easier time lying because you just want to get the game over with? No? Just me? Well, the inhibitory spillover effect is where performing a self-control type of task, like holding your pee, helps you perform a second, simultaneous self-control task, like lying. This effect was shown in a study that was published in the Journal of Consciousness and Cognition in 2015. In this study, people drank a large amount of water 45 minutes before taking an interview where they were instructed to tell lies. People who drank this water were less likely to display behavioral cues that signaled deception, more likely to display behavioral cues signaling truth, and gave more complex accounts than truth tellers. Remember that traitor stress that I talked about earlier? A lot of that stress happens because it's more difficult to lie than it is to tell the truth. In fact, when we lie, our brains have to actively suppress or inhibit the urge to tell the truth. One of the brain regions involved in this suppression is the anterior cingulate cortex, highlighted here. This part of the brain is highly connected to other brain regions, giving it the ability to integrate and regulate our emotions, decision-making, and impulses. So, can you guess one of the brain regions that's also involved in controlling the urge to pee? That's right, it's the anterior cingulate cortex, the same brain region involved in lying. When we suppress that urge, we also activate some of the same brain regions that are used to suppress the urge to tell the truth. This makes it easier to lie. So next time you play your favorite social deception game, remember to stay hydrated, maybe even a little extra hydrated, especially if you're the traitor. I'm not sure which direction they're going to come from.
Oh, wait.
Hey, don't.
Now let's talk a little bit about what lying too often can do to your brain. I call this snowball down a mountain, to stick with the theme of winter. In 2016, a group of scientists showed that repeated dishonesty can actually alter your brain's response to lying. Initially, the region of the brain involved in emotion, specifically fear, is very active when telling a lie. This brain region is called the amygdala, which incidentally is also connected to the anterior cingulate cortex. Over time and after repeated self-serving lies, the response of the amygdala to fear dampens. This reduced response can actually predict whether a person will escalate his lies into even bigger lies in the future. This means that the more you get the traitor role and have the opportunity to practice lying, the more comfortable you'll become telling lies. Hopefully this doesn't leak into your real life. Run, elf! Oh, damn.
Wait, she said run elf. Does that mean she's
Yeah, kill him.
bad?
Just kill him.
Oh, elf.
I'm going
Poor
north for the
elf.
parts, by the way, so...
Even though lying is difficult, the good news for us liars is that on average, people are only about 54% accurate when discriminating a lie from a truth. Of course, this doesn't apply to lying about known facts, but when lying about something like your role or what you've been doing for the past 5 minutes, this information may give you some comfort. There are also some specific behaviors that liars tend to do that you can try to avoid. Some of these behaviors include being less forthcoming than truth tellers. When you're the traitor, be as helpful and forthcoming with details as possible. Liars tend to talk less and provide fewer details than truth tellers. Make your story a little complex, but plausible. Telling less compelling stories than truth tellers. Liars tend to tell poorly structured or contradictory stories more often than truth tellers. Tie your lies into the greater narrative of what's going on. For example, if you steal materials from the first objective, you need to come up with some good reasons for those materials being missing if you're caught. Maybe someone ran near the objective after you, or maybe you collected items to keep them safe from being stolen. Just make sure your story could plausibly fit within reality, and that you tell it with a sense of certainty and engagement. Being more negative than truth tellers. Liars tend to make more negative statements and complain, and are less cooperative than truth tellers. Engage in friendly banter with people at the outset of the game, and appear cooperative until you're ready or willing to go off on your own. Telling stories that are too perfect, with few unusual details. Truthful stories tend to contain some ordinary imperfections, like an inability to remember something. Truthful stories also tend to contain some unusual or extra details, like descriptions of settings. A more colorful story with a couple of forgetful lapses will probably appear more truthful than the perfectly planned, sticking to the important details type of story. Overall, lying is a challenge, but detecting a lie is probably just as, if not more of a challenge. I hope that some of these scientifically tested tips for lying have helped you in some way to understand how to craft more convincing tales in your favorite social deception game. Remember to be careful though. You wouldn't want to permanently damage or wire your brain into a lie-telling machine. Were any of these tips helpful to you? Do you have any good tips of your own? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.
Adding.
They're over there together?
Yeah, they're in the temple here.
Are you down?
Yeah, I'm dead.
No, you're not. Welcome to the family.
Take a hatch so I can get over there. Maybe grab his
Don't go
heart.
back in there.